It was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. Where's Papa going with that axe?
Hey everyone, my name is Aaron Spears, Young Adult Librarian here at the Westlake Porter Public Library. It's another edition of our First Line Friday videos. We're focusing on different aspects of the Young Adult collection here at the library. We've done some just general ones. We also did mysteries on the previous video, and this time we're going to take a look at dystopian fiction. I don't think we'd have the size collection we have of young adult materials if we didn't have the dystopian genre. It is a huge portion of the young adult area, and it's one of the biggest trends in young adult books as well. I think the most famous ones would be Hunger Games, Maze Runner, that sort of thing. So we're going to bypass some of the obvious and very well-known titles and look at some other ones that are in the collection that are, somewhat well-known, and we have some gems that are in there too that aren't quite as widely well-known. But what do we mean when we talk about dystopian fiction? Like, the dictionary definition is saying that it's an imagined state or society where there is great suffering or injustice. Some would argue that doesn't sound too far off from the current state of affairs worldwide in general, but we're talking about the fictional world here. So it's a fictional community or society that features usually one of three things here, sometimes all of them. You've got a tyrannical government, very oppressive, very trying to control society as a whole. Environmental disaster plays a part in some of these as well. Also a cataclysmic or sudden and dramatic and usually tragic decline of just society in general. Like I said, dystopian fiction usually has one of those three, if not a combination of those three. So let's jump into some of these first lines and see if any of these dystopian fiction young adult novels pique your interest. There are places you can go, and a guy as smart as you has a decent chance of surviving past 18. That's an intriguing first line for a number of reasons. One of them would be that it's someone talking to another character, because they're saying, you. And also it's like, wait, why do I need to survive past 18? What is going on here? Also, the hint at places you can go, meaning like you're not safe where you are right now, so what's the deal here? This is from the novel Unwind by Neal Shusterman. Shusterman is really great at building worlds, and in this particular novel, it's a 4-book series. It's after the Second Civil War has happened in the United States, and that Civil War was fought over reproductive rights. So the chilling resolution that came about in this fictional world is that life is inviolable from the moment of conception until the age 13. Between the ages of 13 and 18, however, parents can choose to have their children, quote, unwound, whereby all of the organs are transplanted into different donors. So by this rule, they're saying life technically does not end because all the organs are placed. So in this particular book and in the series, we stick with 3 different characters. We've got Connor, who is too difficult for his parents to control, so he is a candidate to be unwound. Risa, who is a ward of the state, so there's no reason for her to be kept alive, according to the state. And Lev, who is a tithe, so he's a child who is conceived and raised to be unwound. Now, together, all of them may have a chance to survive if they can stick together and get to, as was hinted right there in the first line, places you can go and you can survive past the age of 18. So it's a very great novel and a great series that does an intense world building and really places you into this fictionalized world where children between the ages of 13 and 18 are potentially on the run if they want to escape the unwinding process. But very tyrannical government, very, very kind of body horror in a way, although it's not quite as grisly as it sounds the way it's approached within the book. But it's definitely one of those, like, once you get going with the multiple points of view or the multiple characters that you're following, it is a page turner that you're going to have a hard time putting down. Up next, we've got They Kill My Father First. Simple, direct, 5 words in that first sentence. It implies that you are, the person who's speaking that is clearly like around their father and is narrating that, like, okay, there's tragedy, they killed my father first. So this is very direct tragedy that is going on in the book Lifelike by Jay Kristoff. So this is book 1 of 3, as is the case in a lot of these dystopian books. This is set around Eve. Eve isn't looking for trouble, she's too busy looking over her shoulder. The robot gladiator she spent months building has been reduced to a smoking wreck. She's on the local gangsters' wanted list, and the only thing keeping her grandpa alive is the money she just lost to the bookies. Now, her discovery of a handsome android named Ezekiel, called a lifelike because they resemble humans so closely, This android Ezekiel will bring her world crashing down and make her question whether her entire life has been a lie. With her best friend and her robotic sidekick in tow, Eve treks across deserts of glass, battles unlikable bots, and infiltrates towering megacities to save the ones she loves and the dark secrets of her past. So this is a hero's journey style story that we follow Eve through this dystopic setting that she's in. It leans a little bit more into science fiction and combines that with the dystopian rather than just a straight up dystopian story that we've got here. So if you like a little bit of sci-fi mixed in, this is a good one for you. Daniela Vargas woke at the first whisper of footsteps coming up the road. This one we got to really focus on for a second because Daniela is, she's woken up, so she was asleep, but she's also hearing the first whisper of footsteps coming down the road, not down the hallway or across the room, down the road. So it gives you kind of a hint of like, is there a superpower involved here? What exactly is going on? Also, there's a sense of doom because, you know, there's these footsteps coming up the road, presumably towards her, and there's a sense of worry and dread there as well. This is from We Set the Dark on Fire by Taylor K. Meja. This is a set of 2 books. This is the first one. At the Medio School for Girls, distinguished young women are trained for one of 2 roles in their polarized society. Depending on their specialization, a graduate will one day either run a husband's household or raise his children. But both are promised a life of comfort and luxury, which is far from the frequent political uprisings of the lower class. Daniela is the school's top student, but her bright future depends upon no one discovering her darkest secret, that her pedigree, that she comes from the wealthy, is a total lie. Her parents sacrificed everything to obtain forged identification papers so Danny could be raised above their station in life. Now that her marriage to an important Politico's son is fast approaching, she must keep the truth hidden or be sent back to the fringes of society, where famine and poverty rule supreme. Things get even more complicated when on her graduation night, she is asked to spy for a resistance group desperately fighting to bring equality to Medio. Will Danny cling to the privilege her parents fought to win for her, or will she give up everything she strived for in pursuit of a free Medio? And also a chance at forbidden love, which is blossoming. So this one plays with gender roles within society, and also, though, as you can see just from that description, that brief synopsis, has a very much tyrannical government trying to control every aspect of people's lives within their society. So a little bit of a combination there, commenting on gender roles, but within a top-down tyrannical government controlling everybody in the society. I am afraid someone is coming. All right, I know that's a little bit of a cheat because that's 2 sentences, so it's not first line. But I think you need those both to really get how the start of this particular book works. I'm afraid and someone is coming. So it's actually kind of similar to We Set the Dark on Fire, where, you know, she hears the footsteps down the road. In this particular case, the book is Z for Zechariah. So it's a little bit older, could be considered kind of a classic at this point. This story focuses on Anne Burden, who is a 16-year-old, and she is completely alone. The world as she once knew it is gone, ravaged by nuclear war that has taken everyone from her. For the past year, she has lived in a remote valley with no evidence of any other survivors. But then, this one day, smoke from a distant campfire shatters Anne's solitude. She sees this plume, you know, rising up between the trees, and she realizes someone is still out there. Someone else is still alive, and as she watches the smoke day after day, they're making their way towards her valley. Who is this person? What do they want? Can they be trusted? This is both exciting and terrifying for Anne, but she also soon realizes that there could be worse things out there than being the last person on Earth. This is Z for Zechariah, as I mentioned, by Robert C. O'Brien. He also wrote The Secret of Nim. He's written some classic books in the juvenile fiction and young adult world. This one it was actually also turned into a movie where Margot Robbie plays Anne, so they upped the age a little bit of the main character. But it's this idea of, as we mentioned, this is environmental disaster in this particular case, and then also the danger of what human nature could be in that scenario where everybody is kind of on their own. They're left with no real means of societal order. There's no organized society or government structure to speak up. Everybody's on their own. And, you know, what are the consequences if you're not a nice person in that particular situation? This isn't one of those scare you straight schools, is it? I ask Miss Vaughn as we pass through the heavy chain link gate. So this sets up two characters already in one sentence. You've got the main character and you've got Miss Vaughn. So since she's referred to as Miss Vaughn, not in a friendly, not in a way that it's a friend or something, it's more of an authority figure. So you've got an authority figure and then presumably somebody younger, which is true in this particular case. This is from Variant by Robinson Wells. This is book 1 of 2. There's 2 in this particular series. And the tagline on the cover of Variant, as you'll notice, says, "Trust no one." Has a couple of individuals there. Looks like a guy and a girl running through the woods. The main character we meet immediately in that first line is Benson Fisher, who thought that a scholarship to Maxfield Academy would be the ticket out of his dead-end life. It turns out, of course, he was wrong. Now he's trapped in a school that's surrounded by razor wire fence, a school where video cameras monitor his every move, where there are no adults, where the kids have split into groups in order to survive, where breaking the rules equals death. But when Benson stumbles upon the school's real secret, he realizes that playing by the rules could spell a fate worse than death, and that escape is only real hope for survival. Maybe impossible. So this has a few things going for it. It definitely has that kind of tyrannical government angle, but more within a confined prison or school system, particularly right here. And you also don't really know, at least within that description in that first line, why is it exactly this school was set up? What's going on in the larger world in general? So it has a little bit of that, a little bit of Maze Runner vibe almost, because it's in a confined situation in which it looks like there's no escape to it, even though the characters obviously are going to be trying to escape and form different allegiances. And also it has a little bit of that that oppressive tyrannical government in the rules system that the school has, where like it's our rules or you're dead. Doesn't get much more dystopian than that. Crack, my jaw. The snap echoes between the walls of my skull as white-hot pain shoots down my throat and into my ears, pushing water from my eyes. That might be one of the most poetic ways I've ever heard to explain someone crying, but also pain. Like you feel that pain. Again, a little bit of a cheat, because if you read the text of this one, that isn't just one line, it's 3 lines there, but crack and my jaw, I wasn't counting as first lines. If you look at the book, the way it's formatted on the page, you'll see why we had to keep going with that. Also, that description is amazing. Like you can feel the pain and like the way that the author words it, it's so visceral right there. And it starts off in such an extreme emotion for the main character that you're immediately just placed right in with them and elicit your sympathies too, because it's such a painful thing that's going on to this main character. This is from Beware the Night by Jessica Fleck. On the island of Bellona, life is peaceful as long as the citizens dutifully worship the sun, which protects them from all harm. 17-year-old Veda knows that keeping the sun happy will protect her and her grandfather from the night, the dangerous people who snatch innocent citizens from their beds under the cover of darkness, never to be seen again. As long as Veda follows the rules, she will be safe. But when Veda's grandfather is offered up as the next sacrificial offering to keep the sun's favor, she starts to see that the safety she's been promised comes at a dangerous price. With the mysterious young man, Dorian, at her side, Veda has figured out that if the scary bedtime stories she grew up with hearing are indeed real, or are they maybe dangerous lies? When her world divides, putting light against dark, Veda must join a dangerous revolution to save her grandfather and fight against injustice, even if it costs her the boy she loves. So this is book 1 of 2 in the Offering series by Jessica Fleck. It's an interesting kind of twist or reimagining of dystopian here, because you do have a very oppressive society that in this particular case is worshiping the sun. So that also harkens back to ancient times, like Central American civilizations, or a civilization on the Mideast that worshiped the sun. And also you've got the monsters in the dark, the others, the things that come in the night that are going to steal you away. So there's kind of terror from the society within, and there's terror from without the society as well. But then it also gets into how strong family bonds can be, and also realizing that the world that you've grown up in, the world that you've grown to know, and the rules that you've learned, rigid as they are in this particular story, maybe they shouldn't be there, or should they be there? And you start questioning everything about your world, which is always a classic sign of dystopian fiction, realizing that the world you're in is the worst, and maybe you want to try to work really hard to make something better. So it has a little bit of that tyrannical government thing here, but also a kind of a civilization in decline thing. Like, if we are not sacrificing our own people from our society to appease this thing, in this particular case, the sun, then we will not have a future here. It's like the brink of cataclysmic societal decline, isn't this one? Now that I've found the way to fly, which direction should I go into the night? That one speaks to the need to escape. They want to, that they can fly. Okay, now I need to get out of here. But also like, wait, you can fly? Is there more of a supernatural element going on here in this particular dystopian story? Well, this is from the book Matched by Allison Conde. It's book 1 of 3 in this particular series. It follows Kessia. She has always trusted the society to make the right choices for her, what to read, what to watch, what to believe. So when Xander's face appears on screen at her matching ceremony, Kessia knows with complete certainty that her ideal mate is here. It is Xander. Until she sees Kai's face flash for just a brief instant on the screen in front of her before it fades to black. Well, of course, the society tells her it's a glitch and that she should focus on the happy life she's destined to lead with Xander. But Kessia cannot stop thinking about Kai. She begins to doubt the society's infallibility and is faced with an impossible choice between Xander and Kai, between the only life she's known and a path that no one else has ever dared to follow. So this sounds very, very similar to what we were just talking about with Beware the Night, where you have a society that's fully set up, and you've learned the rules, and you're kind of coming of age as a teenager now, and you're about to head off to like adult life, adulthood, and all of a sudden, wait a minute, are these the rules I want to be following anymore? It's an interesting premise that she sets up in this book, and then really pays off as you go through the rest of the series. There's 3 in this particular one, and really, really interesting. It's an interesting exploration of all of the classic themes of dystopian fiction we've been mentioning so far. It took 15 steps for her to die. That's a pretty solid hook. I mean, there's a death right there in that first few words in that opening line, and it's also not the main character. It's something that it seems like the main character is witnessing in this particular case as well. It's very, I don't know, that seems like a very intriguing one to me. This is from the book Sanctuary by Paula Mendoza and Abby Sheard. This is set not too far in the distant future, just a little bit. It's 2032, so at this point, 10 years in the future, in America. So it's America 2032. All citizens are chipped and everyone is tracked. It's almost impossible to survive as an undocumented immigrant, but that's exactly what 16-year-old Valley is doing. She and her family have carved out a happy life in small-town Vermont. But when Valley's mother's counterfeit chip starts to malfunction, they are forced to flee. They don't get too far, though, when Valley's mother is detained, so Valley must carry on with her younger brother and make it all the way to California, a sanctuary state that is currently being walled off from the rest of the country. This sets up multiple dramatic threads right away. So keep in mind that first line. We have 15 steps for her to die. There is a death that happens pretty quickly, but now we know that you've got a Valley and her younger brother, so brother-sister combo, who are trying to get from Vermont all the way on the East Coast, all the way to California on the West Coast. There's chips, there's tracking, there's a whole presumably underground economy then too of if you're an undocumented immigrant getting a counterfeit chip in you, so whether or not they're being tracked and traced the entire time as well. It's a future America where California is slowly walling itself off. So you need to get not only like across the country with your little brother to get to safety in the sanctuary of California, but before that wall is completed and you can actually get in, and your mother's already been captured as well. So the tyrannical government in this particular case, the oppressive government, knows where you are presumably, or at least who you are, and so you are on the run. It is a fast-paced, kind of a chase story, more or less. But again, you have tyrannical government, declining society, and also very oppressive government since everybody's chipped and traced. one of the authors, in this case, Paula, she was actually the founder of the Women's March from 2017. So she's been a political and social justice activist for years and years and years. This is her first young adult novel that she's co-authoring here with Abby Sher. And it couldn't be more on topic, even though, and I think they smartly did this, they set it enough in the future where it gets a little bit even more dystopic to just sort of see where, hey, maybe given current policy, this is where that may end up if we're not careful or if we don't do something to change the system here. They say I'm sick and I need to be cured. So we don't even get any names in this one, but like they say I'm sick and I need to be cured. Kind of hints that maybe the person saying that line doesn't necessarily believe it. They're just, saying what the information that they've been given to them is, which is exactly the case in Contagion by Terry. So in this particular story, Kai is losing hope of ever seeing his sister Callie again. Then he meets Shay, a girl who saw Callie the day she disappeared, and his hope is reignited. So Kai and Shay start their search to find Callie, his sister, and their search leads them to the heart of a terrifying epidemic that is raging through the country. Can Kai and Shay escape death and also find Callie? Amid the chaos of the spreading epidemic, the teens must find the source of the disease. Could Callie have been part of an experiment in biological warfare? Who is behind this research? And more importantly, is there a cure? Now, this book probably sounds a little close to home these days, given the events of the last couple of years, but this book was written in 2017. So it's not something that's very much, it's not something that's tied into the current global pandemic that's going on, but this is, an amped up version of it. You've got, it's kind of an environmental disaster. It's a virus disaster. It is called Contagion. It's book one of a 3-part series. It's called the Dark Matter series. And the author Terry also did the Slated series as well. But this ratchets up the stakes. You've got, a family torn apart, brother and sister that are separated. You've got a raging pandemic. You've got possible biological warfare going on. You've got to stay healthy and safe while you're trying to track down a family member. You've got little to go on, but you are getting clues here and there. And then also you've got a, tyrannical, oppressive government that's trying to keep things under lock and key as best they can. So again, it's another like teens, young adults teaming up to take on the system and find his missing sister. We're about to die, probably. For some reason, that one, because it's like the probably at the end, that one feels a little bit more humorous to me than maybe some of the ones we looked at. There's not a lot of humor in the dystopian fiction world here in the young adult book examples we're looking at today. This one's from Imposters by Scott Westerfeld. This is another series. This is book 1 of 3. Frey and Rafi are inseparable, 2 edges of the same knife. But only one of them is ever seen in public. Frey is Rafi's twin sister and her body double. Their powerful father has many enemies, and the world has grown dangerous as their old order falls apart. So while Rafi was raised to be the perfect daughter, Frey has been taught to kill. Her only purpose is to protect her sister at all costs, to sacrifice herself for Rafi if she must. When her father sends Frey in Rafi's place as collateral in a precarious deal, she becomes the perfect imposter. But Kal, the son of a rival leader, is getting close enough to spot the killer inside her. So this one sets up a crumbling, not a crumbling political system, but like for this particular family, they're stationed within the tyrannical government, the all-powerful structure in society here. Like their position in society is like starting to crumble, starting to fade a little bit. So you do have that kind of declining society, at least for this family, but you also have this kind of very, very dystopian set political maneuvering within this particular society here. And you also have another sibling bond going on here that gets tested where, one knows how to go out and be like the proper, the proper offspring of an important political person, and the other one has deadly talents, I guess as we will call them. Guessing as it goes through the series, both of those are going to be important in different scenes here. But it's the idea of is this imposter going to be discovered or not? And then also, what are the ramifications of if that imposter is discovered or not? A funny thing happens when you have nothing left to live for. Again, it feels like a tinge of humor there, which again is very lacking in dystopian fiction. So maybe I'm reading a little too much into these first lines, since I'm putting a lot of time and effort into looking at these different first lines, a bit more than if you just read it and keep going with the story. This particular one is from The Final Six by Alexandra Monier. When Leo, an Italian championship swimmer, and Naomi, a science genius from California, are two of the 24 teens drafted into the International Space Training Camp, their lives are forever altered. They become global celebrities in contention for the 6 slots to travel to Europa, Jupiter's moon. Since erratic climate change has made Earth a dangerous place to live, the fate of the population rests on the shoulders of the final 6 who will be scouting for a new planet. As the race to the final 6 advances, the tests get more and more challenging, even deadly. With pressure mounting, Naomi finds an unexpected friend in Leo, and the two grow closer with each mind-boggling experience they encounter. As they grow nearer, Leo and Naomi can finally fathom the full weight of everything at stake: the world, the stars, literally their lives. This one I picked because it wraps up a little bit of a science fiction element in with a dystopian future. So you do have like a worldwide kind of government control system going on, because it's picking out these 24 teens to go into this particular program. But then it also has very much that Hunger Games vibe to a certain extent, because you've got a certain number of teens that are all competing for, like, in this particular case, six spaces on this flight, rather than in Hunger Games, it all has to come down to like that one person who's left standing. It's all about the race to become one of the 6 here, but then there is a second book, a follow-up to this one. I'm not doing any spoilers here or there, but this one isn't about the journey to Europa necessarily. It's about that's the goal that everybody's fighting for, and it's like, who's gonna be the winner. I guess the winner, if you're gonna be one of those 6 that are chosen. So even if you survive the entire ordeal within the book and you become one of those 6, then you still have the treacherous journey of like, okay, now we're gonna be traveling to Europa because the Earth is not gonna be habitable and we need to get off this planet. So you've got the environmental disaster, you've got the kind of tyrannical, oppressive government going on, the decline of society, and then also the classic dystopian kind of battle royale Hunger Games style of fight amongst all of these teens in order to be like one of the few lone survivors. The first clue he had that his hiding place had been discovered came in the form of a hard, open-handed slap to the back of his head. Okay, that one I saved for the last because that one is legitimately funny. You're crouched down, you think you're in a great hiding spot, you've been discovered by a friend who's just giving you a smack on the back of the head. Sounds like most teens I know. This is from Ink and Bone. It's part of the Great Library series. It's 5 books in total by Rachel Kane. So this one, actually, as a quick heads up, is interesting because, the libraries, obviously I'm a fan of libraries, and all of you while watch this would be fans of libraries as well, presumably. They play a very specific role within our society. This completely flips it on its head, and in this dystopian reality, the library is the source of tyranny. So here's the premise of this book. Ruthless and supremely powerful, the Great Library is now a presence in every major city. And what the Great Library does is it governs the flow of knowledge out to the masses. So using alchemy, the Great Library is able to deliver the content of the greatest works of history instantly to anybody. But the big but to that is personal ownership of books in this society is totally forbidden. Jess Brightwell believes in the value of the library, but the majority of his knowledge comes from the illegal books obtained by his family, because his family is involved in the black market of selling books. So Jess has been sent to apprentice and work in the Great Library as his family's spy, but his loyalties are tested in the final months of his training to enter the Great Library's service, because a friend of his inadvertently commits heresy by creating a device that could change the world. Jess discovers that those who control the Great Library believe that knowledge is more valuable than any human life, and soon both heretics and books are going to start burning. So that one has some very interesting twists on what the role of a library in society is supposed to be, and also has some pretty intense shades of Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, also a great book if you haven't read that one. Rachel Kane actually passed away fairly recently, but this was a series that she'd finished a few years before that. So there's 5 in this series. It's called the Great Library series, and it she does a really great job of building the world, because you're talking about flipping the script on what rural libraries have here. It's a familiar world that you're going to have within this dystopic series that she wrote. So if this one grabs you, there are 4 more in this particular series to keep going with. So that wraps it up for this edition of First Line Friday, Young Adult Dystopian Fiction. Hope something in there piqued your interest, and until next time, happy reading, everybody.